Hey everyone, I am Celicia Dwyer Henry. I often abbreviate my name to Miss XRDH as that is a little bit more simple for people to remember. And I suppose I like the mystery. However, before we get started with this talk, I want to just sort of give a really important and crucial heads up. In this topic, I will be discussing themes that I have experienced in my life, which has been very triggering for myself. I don't want to deliver this talk without giving you guys the awareness of the themes I will be talking about. So it is a huge, important trigger warning to let you guys know that I will be speaking about my experience with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I will also be talking about drug and alcohol misuse, my experiences as a result of sexual assault, and a lot of the post-traumatic emotions that I have gone through as a result of some of these experiences. It may get quite intense. However, even though this talk is very personal from my own experiences, I really want you to be discerning with your mental health. If at any point it gets too triggering, please allow yourself to take a step away, and whether it's focusing on your breathing, whether it is taking some water, or whether it is not the right talk for you to see at this moment, please follow those instincts and put your mental health first. If you want to take a break from the talk and pick it up at another time, that is absolutely fine. Just make sure that you put your mental health first, please. If it's something where you aren't ready to watch the talk but you believe you want to watch it at a later date, you can also get in contact with me, or hopefully this will be available for you to watch again at a later date. If not, I'm more than happy to try and send it over to anyone that would like to watch it. But yes, please be aware that we will be talking about very sensitive themes, and also to listen to your mind and body if it gets too much. I do hope you like it, and see you in a second. Hey again. So I kind of feel more than anything it is appropriate to start off the talk based around complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to bring you into the frame of mind of where I was at where I first received that diagnosis. And that was in July 2021. And experiencing that diagnosis, bearing in mind there had been a huge degree of trauma and self-destruction leading up to that diagnosis. The first thing that I had initially felt was the degree of shock and judgment in relation to my own trauma, but also my own validity to get diagnosed with something that was, to myself anyway, seeming so extreme. Now, to contextualize that, I would sort of need to speak about the way how post-traumatic stress is seen, and the reaction surrounding that. And of course it is deserved, because post-traumatic stress disorder, it does sort of say, in terms of when I say post-traumatic stress disorder rather than like PTSD, typically people refer to this in terms of someone that has gone through a significant life event where it can cause a degree of trauma as a result. And of course, how that can affect you, or how the pain can manifest in your mind and your body, is whether that is through anxiety, whether that is through becoming much more reclusive. There is so many stuff that's going on. And even though I refer to it in terms of typically it being an extreme life event, many people associate this with those that have gone through experiences in the war, which is kind of how it was brought into like the mainstream attention and awareness, which of course is deserved. But one thing that is thankfully being put out much more is that post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is something where it does not have to be connected to a huge huge event, if that makes sense. It's more about how your body reacts as a result of it. So when I had received the diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which, to articulate the difference between the two, it's, well, yes, it is much more complex, but rather than it being a singular incident where pain and trauma is manifesting in the mind and body, it actually goes to where there is more than one event. Now, it could be a something that has happened over a prolonged period of time. It could be whether there has been more than one incident. There is quite a lot of things that can really come into the category. Now, the reason why I just want to sort of make a mention and say it is not so much about the extremity as such is because I don't want to put out a stigma out there like what I had previously seen it as and viewed it as, well, my trauma is not bad enough to warrant this diagnosis. So where I kind of connect that on is it brings me onto generational trauma and also the way in which trauma has been viewed within the elder generations. So with my mother and my father's generation, we are comparing their experiences. So myself as a black woman, where racism was much more of a common practice, where female rights was an abomination, but yes, there was much less laws that had been introduced. You had, if you're talking about trauma in itself, we're looking at that, just that sort of period in time where charities like I believe it's Childline had just been set up and so on. So there was much less outlets publicly for people to have trauma recognised. And part of that is because, okay, you go for the generation upwards, which again, for me being a black woman, that starts to go on to the generation of where there is slavery. You're starting to look at a lot of the, of course, yes, slavery, but we are also looking at situations in relation to class. We're looking at accessibility in relation to education and so on. So when I had received my own diagnosis, I had looked at it as not being so much of a massive issue in comparison to what other generations would have faced, or what my ancestors may have faced, or what any of my other relatives may have faced. And even though I feel that it's important to state that there should not be this judgment on what pain is valid and what validity of pain allows you to warrant certain diagnosis, more than anything, I want to sort of use this as a moment to dispel a lot of those stigmas. So if anyone finds themselves in my position or knows of anyone in my position, rather than making that comparison where we're looking at it as, okay, well, I didn't go through X, Y, or Z experience, so I can't have this, or I acknowledge that I may be fortunate because I am from this generation or so on, where the opportunity to acknowledge and heal trauma is not lost. So to sort of bring that in, this is the part where it does get a bit hard and heavy, so I do apologize for any of those where I may trigger in bringing this up. But this is where we are also starting to look at, okay, with situations such as generational and things that have changed within, within 3 generations lifetime, but of course in mine is, I'm starting to look at, of course, the accessibility to information. So say in relation to being a female, for example, we are looking at, though there is still a lot more that needs to be done in relation to sexual violence, sex crimes, the laws regarding that, and the action that's taken against it. I would say one thing that I am appreciative for is I do have a better structure in place and have accessibility to charities where, of course these charities was there before, but it was not so widely reaching as what it is now. Now, sexual violence, sadly, is something that I've gone through quite a bit within my own lifetime. And that has been something where within my own traumas, it has caused me to escalate a lot of issues I have within my own body to try and find a way that I could numb that pain. So whether that was through misusing medication, whether that is through drinking excessively, whether that is through anything really that is chasing a high. And of course, there was quite a few suicidal tendencies and of course self-harm tendencies that I had gained into that could, more than anything, try and help me to alleviate or to numb pain that I was experiencing at those times. Now, where I sort of think about this in relation to generation again is I look at how, in relation to sexual violence, for example, how you have stuff like stalking, you have stuff like things that was considered a domestic incident in relation to domestic abuse and so on, where these would not be taken as seriously as what it is now in relation to reporting crimes. While I do say that, I also do want to acknowledge that by no means does it mean that there is not work to do, because there's so much work to do. But basically, I sort of look at the things of, because of how things was different before, that there was many things that was skirted around, so people didn't have the accessibility or resources like what I have been able to experience within my own time. Now, how myself going through sexual assault affected me personally and the destruction that caused, it was something where that took probably something like a 5 to 7 year journey. And I was fortunate where I was able to get some support. I was able to talk to people that could really help me, and I was able to access fantastic mental health resources that was able to assist me. There was other things that happened in terms of I got sadly really, really chronically ill, which does, of course, connect back into this as well. And that started to affect my muscle capacity. That started to affect what I could do. That, of course, affected my mental health as I had to grieve with what my body knew of itself and what it didn't know how to do, or what it didn't have the muscle memory to do anymore. So in that time, I have had to learn how to be kinder to my body, and of course, while healing from sexual assault, also trying to learn what consensual experiences are, trying to unravel part of unconsensual touch that has been so normalized within my own lifetime and so on. Now, eventually, the issues that I go on to experience, it escalates with my physical health, warranting a diagnosis with chronic fatigue syndrome (ME). Now, I am an artist, so I do cover this quite a bit in my work, and this is the first time I'm sort of speaking about the correlation between, like, say, chronic fatigue syndrome, to speaking about issues such as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and also tying it into stuff such as sexual assault as well, and making a correlation between those 3 points. But during that, I found that this is where it becomes similar to sexual assault. Is I found that there was a blockage in whether it was my physical strength, whether it was what I was mentally able to do. There was this blockage. I couldn't push past it anymore. And while, of course, I was dealing with the relationship to self-destruction, I was still trying so hard to push past, and it affected my body so much more. So to give a bit of a rundown about chronic fatigue syndrome, that is something that affects the muscles, the joints, and the nerves. Now, for me, when I started becoming affected by it, it started off as muscular pain and joint pain. Slowly, the areas that was affected, which usually for me, it started off as muscle groups that I was using. As I tried to push past it more, the surface areas that was affected was starting to grow much wider. And for those that are familiar with lupus or any of the other autoimmune diseases, it began to manifest in my body like that as well. So what I basically found was I wasn't able to walk for long periods of time. And if I was triggered, I would want to party or something like that, or I would want to drink excessively. Now, I would find that walking for long periods, dancing, that would cause a flare-up in my health. Even drinking alcohol, that would cause a flare-up in my health, and so on, cause this very destructive cycle of me wanting to find an outlet where I could run away from my pains and my traumas, but not being able to with my physical health. Now, during the lockdown period, and sadly, of course, coming up to the lockdown period, my mental health did decline quite a bit, where I needed to get back onto counselling and receiving mental health support. And of course, I also needed to basically access greater support from the mental health team. And it was through that how I managed to get the diagnosis of the complex post-traumatic stress disorder. But along that journey, I was able to speak to, basically I had a really lovely chance conversation with one of like a charity that I tried to raise money for in relation to my own personal artwork. And the woman had told me about how pain manifests in the body, and many survivors of sexual assault also begin to get diagnoses such as chronic fatigue syndrome, ME. Now, it does feel really crucial as well as liberating for me to share this, because why I want to share all this information is to sort of speak about how these factors all connect. And while all these factors do connect, this is while I still have moments where I judge myself on the validity to warrant such a important diagnosis and something that can control my mind, body and soul in such a way. And what I found was, even though I know that the depression can be bad, the suicidal thoughts can be bad, the self-harm can be bad, the self-destruction overall, it all can be very bad and very harrowing. First of all, I feel appreciative to be alive and to be able to talk and be able to speak so openly about this, because there's many times where I haven't been able to. But I do look at, of course, the people that aren't able to. Of course, the people where they have lost their lives, the people where, of course, they're still fighting or feeling suicidal. But I look at the repressed trauma from those that have had pain normalized as a survival mechanism. And even though I am not a medical professional at all, where I can say, you have this diagnosis, what I want to do more than anything is to say, if you know that you have an experience that affects you physically, and whatever you're trying to do, whether that is destructive or not, you're finding that it's something that takes over your life, takes over your body, your relationships with others are being affected, please just see if there's a medical professional, whether it's that you need someone to come with you to those appointments or so on, or whether you are able to access information for people that may have similar experiences. And the reason why I want to just say that is because though I can speak very eloquently and can compose myself to articulate everything I've been through, there has been many moments where it has been the fine line between life or death. And for myself at the moment, I'm fortunate that it's life for me, but I don't want anyone else to go through that same element of repressed trauma that I had previously faced, or where it's not being addressed how it deserves to because of societal opinions on addressing mental health or addressing physical health. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you. Of course, there's so much more that I want to say, and there's so much more that this topic deserves, which I do look forward to expanding on further. What I would say is, if you do want to reach out to me and find out a bit more about my experiences, you are welcome to contact me on social media or via my email address. I will try and put that on the next slide for you to write that down. If you also want to hear more about me speak on this topic as well, I am hopefully doing another talk very soon as well, where it will be longer so I can really contextualize it all, and I can show you my artwork, which can detail how I have been able to help work through it with my own mental health. But that feels like the end of my talk. And yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that it resonates. And I hope that, like I said, if it's something that you have experienced or anyone you know have experienced, please find a way to get in contact with someone that you can access help for, because everyone deserves to live a good quality of life, and to have mental health take over that, or any type of trauma take over that, is just too costly on happiness. So I do want to leave it there. Please also remember, I'm not giving any form of official diagnosis. I'm not chartered in any way. I am just someone that have been through the mental health system, been through all the traumas, and want to share that information. So I do hope it resonates, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.